Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at all of the best players to buy ahead of Game Week 4. Welcome back to another video on my channel. Today, we're going to be discussing all of the best players to be buying ahead of Game Week 4, with a few players discussed that have been popular pickups or sales that I just want to discuss throughout the video intermittently. Now, if you did enjoy today's video, it would mean the world to me if you could just drop a like and especially hit subscribe as we chase down 5,000 subscribers in the next few weeks. Hopefully. Let's start off by talking about one of the most popular transfers in ahead of Game Week 4. That is, of course, Alexander Isak, after his move to Liverpool was confirmed at the end of the transfer window. Now, I think it's really important to mention that whilst he's being bought almost by 500,000, that's 500,000 managers so far. We're only halfway through before the deadline of Game Week 4, so it's going to keep rising. He hasn't actually played any minutes whatsoever this season. Obviously, the data on screen reflects that in a Newcastle shirt. But I still think it's going to be a little while before he's up and running properly with Liverpool. He hasn't played in pre-season. He's been training by himself. The Sweden national team coach also said as much in the pre-match press conference, and he wasn't used in the first of the two Sweden international games in the international break. So I think it's very unlikely he starts against Burnley in Game Week 4. I also think it's pretty unlikely he even starts or is ready to start by Everton in Game Week 5, although it is more likely that by that point that he'll start getting integrated a bit more. So whilst he's being bought by a lot of managers, and I can see the logic, he's a very high upside player, even with limited minutes off the bench, he might get something, but he's going to be worked in fairly slowly for Liverpool, especially considering they've got Ekitike and Gakpo both playing very well so far this season. They're not just going to rush Isak in, and when he does come in, I don't think he's going to be getting 90 minutes straight away either, given the form of the two other players that he might be looking to displace. Now, they might try and play a 4 up top with all 4 of them, but even if that is the case, it's quite likely that they won't finish the match with that, and one of those players, if not 2 or 3 of them, might come off at different stages. So undoubtedly going to be a fantastic FPL pick at some point. We know the data's great. We know the quality of the striker is absolutely phenomenal. But I would just be patient on it for a little while. I don't see him starting against Burnley. And even if he does get minutes off the bench, Ekitike is going to get a lot more. Gakpo is going to get a lot more to begin with, you would think. So I just wait a few weeks and maybe even until after Crystal Palace and Chelsea are out the way before jumping on him anytime soon. So assessing a few of the strikers that you might want to buy ahead of Game Week 4, Erling Haaland is going to be particularly popular. He's off to a great start, great underlying data, and a nice home fixture against Man United that I would predict he does very well in. However, not many of us are going to be able to get there with free transfers, so a much more popular pickup if you're on a wild card or a free hit in Game Week 4, which I could possibly be. So he is interesting to me, but I don't think there's any immediate rush to go there if you're just using free transfers, mainly because most of us who can't get to Haaland will be, of course, already on Mo Salah, and he's a good captaincy option in Game Week 4 himself. So a great player to own, a great player to be buying if you can get there easily. But I wouldn't be ripping apart your side to get to him unless, of course, you're on a wild card. Moving down, you've got Gyökeres far beyond the likes of Watkins in terms of the expected points over the Game Week 4 and over the next few fixtures. But I wouldn't be rushing to make that move this week, especially with the next 4 that Watkins has, including both Sunderland and Burnley. Gyökeres does look like a good long-term buy, but I think Game Week 7 is probably the best hopping on point. If you're on a free hit in Game Week 4, it makes a lot of sense as well to have him for 1 week, and it's something I'm considering. But Man City and Newcastle in 5 and 6, it's not an ideal hopping on point, although the minutes are good, and he should have penalties for the foreseeable until Bukayo Saka comes back at least. Arsenal's fixtures turn really positive from Game Week 7 onwards though, so a transfer that I am trying to put a pin in for the next few game weeks. I'm not losing faith in Ollie Watkins yet, even though I can't see anyone realistically buying him right now. He's a player that I would try to hold on to, or I'm personally going to try and hold on to for the Sunderland and Burnley fixtures. Although Aston Villa aren't creating much at the moment, so there's no guarantee he returns in those either. 2 of the most popular strikers for this week that I would personally be eyeing up are Mateta and João Pedro. Mateta at home to Sunderland, on penalties, getting good minutes, and more of a talisman than ever for Crystal Palace, with West Ham in Game Week 5 as well. it's a great time to be buying him. Meanwhile, João Pedro away at Brentford and then going up against Man United and then Brighton, his old club, I can see returning really well as well, especially because without Palmer in the side, his minutes seem to be a little bit bolstered. And now without Delap there as well, he's got all the chance in the world of getting 85, 90 minutes every single week, which was a major drawback to buying him in the first place, which has now been removed. And there's also not an impossible chance that he gets penalties, having gifted the last one to Enzo Fernandez. He might step up and take them next up if Palmer's not back in the 11. So both of which very good buys. Even though João Pedro is owned by a significant portion, almost 2/3 of the game, I'd still be looking at buying him in game week 4 if you have got the chance. I don't think the ship has sailed just yet. Now, Wissa and Voltemada, 2 Newcastle assets appearing here, mainly because of their Wolves home fixture in game week 4. I personally wouldn't be risking it on either of them just yet. Voltemada, new league, new system, new players around him. It's going to be difficult for him to integrate immediately. I think he will be very good in the long term, though. And Wissa, similar situation. Although he's used to the league and might get penalties in the long term for Newcastle, he hasn't played any minutes in pre-season or in the Premier League yet. So it might just take him a little while to get up and running. So probably not players that I'd be looking at for this week, although it is tempting with the fixture. If you're on a free hit and you wanted to take a risk, I'd probably go with Wissa over Voltemada, but neither of which I'd be highly recommending just yet. Ekitike is probably great for another couple of game weeks, but he will be sharing minutes with Isak, or Gakpo will be sharing with Isak, and then one of them will get subbed off at a certain point. Either way, even if it's indirectly, Ekitike's minutes will probably take a little bit of a further nosedive now Isak has signed over the medium term. Burnley, again, on a free hit, looks like a great fixture to be buying him for or having him for, but considering he's 8.7 million and the minutes are likely to go downhill fairly soon, I wouldn't be ripping apart my side with free transfers to buy him now. A couple of others in there, Evanilson and Boehm seem like decent enough holds, but I don't think many people are going to be buying them this week. And Watkins, as I mentioned, I'd probably be tempted to try and hold on to if at all possible. But if you've got no other issues with your side, I understand why some people would look at the form of the team and the player and lose faith now, but he is racking up a fair few shots now. He got a couple of chances against Crystal Palace. I've got a sneaky feeling returns aren't too far away. One striker who didn't quite make the list there is Chris Wood, and he's been sold by 300,000 managers already. And again, we're only halfway through the international break, so I imagine that figure will double, if not triple, before the deadline. Arsenal away, admittedly, is a horrible fixture for Nottingham Forest to have to come up against after the international break, especially considering the team form isn't particularly high. And Chris Wood's minutes are looking like they're sliding ever so slightly over the first few game weeks. Not as reliable as last season. They've got replacement strikers, or at least backup strikers, that will take minutes off of him, and they've got Europe to contest with as well. So I think he's not quite as good a long-term pick as he was last year, and the minutes will be shared. Although when he's on the pitch, the XG per 90 is looking as strong as ever, if not actually a little bit stronger than last season, although admittedly off of a short sample size. And honestly, I probably wouldn't be looking at selling him in game week 4, considering game weeks 5 and 6, Burnley and Sunderland look like great fixtures to have him for. In between those two fixtures, however, they do start their Europa League fixtures, so there might sneak up a little bit of a chance of rotation over the next few game weeks. So I'd probably hold fire just for now until we see those first substitutions or those first issues of rotation start cropping up in the Premier League. But it is a word of warning. Managers are selling him. His ownership's dropping. His price might start to drop as well. Arsenal's not an easy fixture, nor is Newcastle in game week 7. So if you're holding on to him, it's mainly for those next two, Burnley and Sunderland in 5 and 6. If I personally had him, I would be trying to hold on to him for just those two. Then pretty soon after that, look for a route away, with all of the rotation worries and the fact that the team just aren't performing that well generally at the moment, all in the back of my mind. For next 3 fixtures though, I think I'd probably just about try to hold on. Moving into the midfielders to buy, no surprises who takes up the top 3 positions. Salah, Gakpo, Wirtz, all playing away at Burnley for Liverpool. And Salah is just a no question mark, a great captain for this week as well. So there's just no universe in which I'd be looking to sell this week, even if there are some doubts about him long term not being quite as involved as in previous seasons. I would just chuck that down the road, kick that down the road for a little bit of time. Burnley is not the fixture to be messing around with Mo Salah for. Gakpo and Wirtz as well. If you've held on for this long, especially with Wirtz, Gakpo's been impressive. But if you've got Wirtz and you're a little bit annoyed with his form and performances so far, just hold faith for another week or two. Burnley away is a great opportunity for him to get back to his best. He should be playing more advanced, and he will have opportunities to maybe right a few wrongs from the first few game weeks. It's also worth noting his XGI per 90 is actually so far slightly better than Gakpo, who's got 3 returns, and better than Salah, who's got 2 returns as well. So maybe the eye test is a little bit deceiving. He has been dropping deep. He has been struggling a little bit with the physicality of the league, but Burnley is a team that will sit in. He will get a bit more joy and a bit more time on the ball. So I just wouldn't be getting rid of him yet. And arguably on a free hit, I would still be looking at picking him up as well as Gakpo, or either or Gakpo. I think out of the two, I'd prefer Gakpo right now. But again, long term with Gakpo, he might start sharing minutes with either Ekitike or Isak. So a good buy for now, but just keep an eye on the minutes in the medium to long term. So far, so good though. 90 minutes every single week, and Burnley seems like a safe fixture for him, and all of those 3 to get attacking returns. Barnes is a little bit more risky. He does crop up 4th here, so there is undoubtedly upside in terms of the expected points at home to Wolves. Now, Wolves themselves have really struggled so far this season, really bad defensively in terms of the underlying data and just the system, the shape. It looks very open for taken advantage of for Newcastle this game week. The only hesitation I'd have on Barnes is how messed with the system a little bit in the previous game week against Leeds. Didn't really work though, so I'd be very surprised if he kept going with that formation, but there is now at least a chance that he mixes it up and Barnes' minutes aren't quite as secure. I think he'll start. I think he'll get good minutes. And if he does, the upside is there. He's also a major differential. So still a player I'd definitely be looking at buying for this game week, especially on a free hit. But longer term, Gordon's going to be back in a couple of game weeks and he will get minutes at left wing instead of Barnes. So his minutes will drop off a cliff pretty soon, and especially now that they've got centre forwards, Gordon won't be playing out of position, so it's going to be a straight shootout between him and Gordon for that left wing position. So short term, absolutely fine. Long term, very, very risky. I wouldn't be buying him for anything more than 1 or 2 game weeks now. Fernandes, always a good player to own. The underlying data has been good. He's got a couple of penalties so far, missed one of them, of course. Man City and Chelsea next up. I wouldn't be buying him now, but I also wouldn't be rushing to sell him, considering he's a player that can just reliably return in any single game week. He will get defensive contributions, you'd think, in the next 2, or at least in one of the next 2. So we'll tick along nicely. No reason to be rushing a sale just yet, but he wouldn't be a player that would squeeze in on a wild card or a free hit necessarily. So I can see why some people might be looking at alternatives ahead of game week 4. Ndai and Enzo, both 6.5, 6.6 million, both very good mid-price midfielders, both of which on penalties it seems, although Enzo I'd be less confident on that, especially with Palmer coming back soon, and the fact that it seemed like João Pedro sort of gifted him the ball for the penalty. So I'm not sure Enzo is the second place penalty taker at Chelsea necessarily, but either way, the data so far this season in both cases very strong. Not bad fixtures in game week 4 either, and if you're looking for that mid-price midfielder for the long term, either of which look absolutely secure for minutes, very good, especially from an attacking point of view for Ndai. Enzo's, I don't expect his data to hold up to 0.76 throughout the season, probably more like 0.4, 0.5, but that's still pretty good at 6.6. And honestly, both of these two are right up there with my favourite mid-price midfielders right now, especially Ndai on penalties. Everton have really let loose this season. They look like a much better attacking outfit with the likes of Dewsbury Hall and Grealish signed as well. So both of which very happy to own. Just watch out for that Liverpool fixture in game week 5 for Ndai in particular. Moving down, Madueke could be a really nice 1 week punt at home to Nottingham Forest. Paquetá looks like a great long-term hold. Again, another mid to budget midfielder on penalties, playing out of his skin right now. Looks like an absolutely transformed player this season. 4 goals on the bounce at time of recording in consecutive fixtures. Spurs, Crystal Palace, Everton next up. It's not amazing for a run of fixtures, but it's also not a run that I'd be particularly worried about him getting returns in. So a great pickup at 5.9 million and one of my favourite assets or options under 6 million, sorry, at time of recording. Semenyo, finally, I thought I'd add at the bottom here, 7.4 million. He's in the form of his life. Good fixtures coming over the medium to long term. If you can get there and you're looking for a replacement for someone like Ismail Assar and you've got the money, Semenyo looks like a fantastic option, but he is a little bit more expensive and that price looks likely to continue rising. His shot volume is incredible. He's cutting inside. He's getting very central this season. And of course, the returns are there, as is the underlying data. So a player I'm very bullish on. I love him just as a player as well, personally. That's a subjective point of view, but I think he's got that bit of star quality about him, and I do see him having a big breakout season this year. So Semenyo at 7.4 is getting a little bit more on the expensive side, but I also expect the attacking returns to continue. So he would be another player I'd have no hesitation in recommending to buy ahead of Game Week 4, and Brighton at home doesn't seem too bad either. One player that didn't quite make it onto the top 10 for me is Jack Grealish, who has been the most bought player ahead of Game Week 4 by a landslide as well. 850,000 transfers in at time of recording. That is going to go far north of 1 million by the time we hit the Game Week 4 deadline. It's easy to see why as well. Back-to-back double returns or double assists in consecutive games for Everton. He again looks like a player reborn this year. 6.7 million. The price is rising, but it's still good value for money if he returns at this rate. It's also worth noting that the underlying data also is pretty strong. I was a little bit surprised it's quite this good at 0.59 XA per 90. He's also got a little bit of goal threat in there as well. So it's not just a matter of him massively outperforming the underlying data, which he is doing to a certain extent. But the data also reflects the fact that he should get a fair few attacking returns if this holds up. Maybe not quite at this rate, but there's still something to hold on to there. He's not just a form pick that is getting a bit lucky with a few returns here or there. He's a player that is getting maybe fractionally lucky, but the data's also looking pretty positive as well. Aston Villa have struggled so far this season. Liverpool is a tough game, but it's a Merseyside derby. And then West Ham and Crystal Palace both at home. That's 3 home fixtures in the next 4. Grealish looks like a player that loves having the team sort of molded around him. He feels like the big dog again, it seems, at Everton, whereas at Aston Villa, again, he was kind of the main man and everything revolved around him a little bit. He was the creative fulcrum of the team. We missed that at City. He was a smaller piece, of a much bigger puzzle, and he was playing more of a system and not given the same sort of creative license necessarily. At Everton, he's off the leash and he's just going for it once again, and he looks like he's really feeding off the confidence that Moyes and the team are giving him. So he's a player that I love watching. He's honestly one of my favourite players in the league right now. I'm not sure if I would be rushing to buy him, considering the next 2 are Aston Villa and Liverpool. But if you're on a wild card, or if you just want a player for the long term, his minutes look really good. He looks like a player who's right at the top of his game right now. And if we cast our mind back to Aston Villa's Jack Grealish, he was a fantastic FPL pickup for a long, long time. And he got both goals and assists. So I think it's a bit of a mistake to assume that he's only going to be getting assists, as that's what he's got so far. He does also have a good shot on him. He does cut inside. He does get the ball in the back of the net at fairly regular intervals if we do look back at his time at Aston Villa. And I imagine that Moyes is going to try and use him in a similar way over the medium to long term. So a great player to be buying, a great player to try and squeeze into your FPL side. It's not a rush to do it this week, though, considering the next 2 don't look ideal on paper. Game week 6, though, absolutely fine. And honestly, I've not got any problem with anyone buying him now, considering the form he's in either. So lastly, looking at the defenders, and it's clear to see that this is a week to be looking at Crystal Palace assets, each of which has their own unique set of benefits to buying. Munoz, we all know, is that attacking outlet for Palace. He does bomb forward down the right-hand side. He even gets into almost striker-like positions at points. And without Eze there, with Sarr potentially injured for a little while, there's going to be even more emphasis on Munoz to provide that creativity and get shots away. With Sunderland and West Ham in the next 2, it's a great time to be buying any Crystal Palace player, to be honest, but especially Munoz, who is one of the top players I'd be looking at ahead of Game Week 4. But don't discount Lacroix, Richards, Gahey. Obviously, Richards and Gahey are both decent on defensive contributions and a bit cheaper. So if you're looking at a budget pickup for a defender, I would look no further than Richards or Gahey this week, especially Richards, considering Gahey might have maybe some issues given the whole fiasco around the Liverpool signing or non-signing, as it were. But he's a very professional player, so I imagine that he'll be fine and come straight back into the lineup, to be honest. I wouldn't be too worried. Lacroix is the defensive contributions monster. So at 5 million, I think it is worth that 0.4, 0.5 extra ahead of Richards or Gahey. And he also does, historically at least, have very good attacking threat from set pieces, slightly better than both Richards or Gahey as well. So if you've got the money, I'd go to Lacroix. And if you've got a little bit more money, I'd also eye up Munoz as well. Gabriel comes out second in terms of the expected points this week. Good chance of a clean sheet against Nottingham Forest. And although Man City and Newcastle aren't great fixtures, I still don't hate it as a time to be picking him up ahead of the fixture swing in game week 7, especially considering it seems like Saliba's out for a little while. Gabriel now looks to be the player that you'd most obviously target in that Arsenal defence. You could look at Mosquera, but they've just signed another centre-back, so Gabriel seems like the senior member that is almost certain to start every single week for Arsenal. So Forest and West Ham in the next 4. Good odds of a clean sheet, and honestly, they could keep a clean sheet against anyone. They're an elite defence. So Man City and Newcastle, not ideal, but still not a bad time to be buying him. Virgil van Dijk also appears here. You could also look at Konate, but Virgil would be my preference, I suppose, at 6 million. 2 good fixtures. Back-to-back, Burnley, then Everton, 4 clean sheet odds. Even Crystal Palace after that's not a terrible fixture for clean sheet. He's got attacking threat. He's got a decent chance of defensive contributions as well. And he's one of the best value 6.0s in the game at the moment. So another player I'd be looking at for this week if you don't already have him. Shah and Burn, the Newcastle options. You could look at Livramento as well here, but Shah does historically have that attacking threat, but Dan Burn's not too bad from set pieces either. Obviously, he's an absolute unit. Wolves at home seems like a fixture that you would target for a clean sheet. They're the worst attack in the league so far this season from an XG point of view. And defensively, Newcastle are the best from an XGC point of view so far this season, despite having played Liverpool in that time. So Shah and Burn seem like very good pickups. I would probably go for Burn just for the saving of 0.5. If I had the choice, if I was on a free hit, I might go for the upside of Fabian Schär just because he's got that little bit extra set piece threat. But if you're looking at a transfer, Burn might be the more secure way to go and just save that 0.5. I'm not sure the difference is that drastic, and Burn seems like a very good pickup. Moving down, you've got Tarkowski and Porro, both good options to hold on to this week. Tarkowski, maybe even a good buy this week if you can look at benching him in game week 5 away at Liverpool, but he's got defensive contributions every single week so far. So his floor seems to be 3 points minimum, even if they do concede 2+ goals. And Aston Villa, West Ham, Crystal Palace in the next 4. Clean sheets don't look that unlikely either. So a great pickup at any point, considering he's always got that raised floor. As with Porro, he's risen in price just once, so 0.1 million up from his starting price. He's owned by a quarter of the game, and away at West Ham, the Spurs assets are pretty decently owned. So Van de Ven as well and Romero, both players that have a decent amount of ownership. Porro has the most attacking upside. The cheaper options might be more tempting. I understand that, but Porro's attacking upside might outweigh that over the long term. 0.19, so about an attacking return every 5 game weeks you'd expect. West Ham, Brighton, Wolves, Leeds. It's about as good a run as you're ever going to get in FPL. So if you're still looking to buy a Spurs defender, now is undoubtedly the time to be doing so. One final defender who didn't quite make the top 10, but I do want to talk about as a great player to be buying, not just for now, but also for the long term as well, is Senesi at Bournemouth. Not bad on the underlying attacking threat either so far this season. He's picked up an assist, but he, a little bit like Tarkowski and Lacroix, an absolute defensive contributions monster. And what that means is that the floor is just that little bit higher on him than any of the other 4.5 million defenders. 42% chance of hitting those thresholds over the next 5 game weeks. So you'd expect an extra 4 points over the next 5 game weeks from Senesi on average. It might even be a little bit better than that if you get a bit lucky. And looking at the next 4 fixtures, it's not terrible chances of clean sheets either. Brighton, Newcastle, Leeds, Fulham. You might expect 1 or 2 clean sheets in there as well. So I still think he's a great pickup at a budget price and a player who's going to become much more popular than 5% ownership over the long term if he continues to hit the defensive contribution numbers that he has done so far this season. And if Bournemouth continue to look like a strong defence, which I think came as a little bit of a surprise at the start of the year, but they've signed well and Iraola has got them drilled down to a T. So I'm very bullish on Bournemouth. I'm very bullish on Senesi. Good fixtures to come, still cheap. And those defensive contributions are going to be a bit of a cheat code for him. He's averaging about 14 defensive contribution points per week at the moment, and I don't see why that wouldn't continue over the next few game weeks. As we reach the end of today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the show, of course. And if there are any players I haven't spoken about today, do feel free to drop a comment below and we can have a chat about them in the comments as well. In the meantime, I'll see you next time as we start locking in our sides ahead of Game Week 4.